While I'm not usually a ship guy, as in I tend to stay away from the development process of ships and concepts until they're actually tangible and in-game, or at least refrain from fawning over ships themselves versus the gameplay they can actually provide, the RSI Polaris is Star Citizen's first ownable and flyable capital ship, and once again, CIG and its Golden Goose team of ship designers have really pushed the boundaries of video game aesthetics. One of my org mates and viewers, Reyba, kindly provided his Polaris for me to take a look around, so this video will be a bit of an impromptu tour, first look, and some of my thoughts on the ship, and more importantly, its actual gameplay potential. The mess hall is huge, and while it currently has absolutely zero reason to exist, I'm hoping in the future to perhaps see something like Star Wars Galaxy's Entertainer-style buff system inside the mess hall. Basically, in Star Citizen's case, they could simply top up your food and drink stats, or overfeed and overhydrate you the longer you spend in the mess hall. Maybe you need to have food supplies in the cargo bay or something along those lines. But give me some sort of buff for spending some time in the mess hall, so we have reasons to go there. And since NPCs aren't even on the roadmap for Star Citizen 1.0, which I assumed would make use of the mess hall, it really has even less reason to exist than before. I don't know what it is about the corridors around the ship, but they just seem wider and more open, which is great because me and my org are looking forward to running some firefight boarding party style ops around the ship pretty soon. Crew quarters now, and with bed logging still not really functional, there isn't really any utility here yet, but it will hopefully be an important part of all ships once CIG figures out how they want this player bed spawning on crew-based ships to work. Again, with no NPC crew coming online in 1.0, this is another room that seems even more redundant, unfortunately. I believe there are a total of 12 fuse boxes around the ship, so when engineering comes online, you and your crew will have your work cut out for you, keeping these replaced and fitted, but luckily, as I said earlier, the ship layout generally feels pretty good and easy to navigate, which should help keep things running smoothly. The armory is always one of my favorite places on a ship, especially when it's actually bristling with guns. There are weapon racks immediately to your left and right as you enter, and suit lockers in front. I'm looking forward to suit lockers coming online, as well as more reasons for us to actually change our suits. Suit lockers also mean less stacking of equipment inside boxes for our org events, which I know our org quartermasters will be happy to see. Leading to the bridge, there is a row of escape pods for the most important members of the crew. The bridge crew. Disappointing we didn't see an update on escape pods for the 1.0 roadmap, as multi-crew ships have a tendency to be giant coffins in battle for the crew inside. Soft death does help, but I would like to see more health for soft death ships to give the crew more time to escape. The bridge of the Polaris is one of the best I've seen so far, and the RSI aesthetic is being perfected. After the Zeus and now this, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with the Perseus next year, which is one of two of the only concept ships I currently care for. The Polaris's bridge feels very Star Trek to me. The placement of the captain's chair, the spaciousness, and the almost L-cars-like terminals behind the crew stations all help to give off that vibe. I don't know how you guys feel about struts, but I'm actually a big fan of them. They just make ships feel more visceral to me, and RSI has them aplenty, but at least CIG is getting better with their placement. Taking the elevator down now to the Holy Polaris torpedo room. Yes, this is the torpedo operating station, and yes, you can see the torpedoes being loaded into tubes as you fire them. There is a remote turret position here for locking targets, but I'm not sure how I feel about having this operator seat so far from the bridge. Regardless, in order to be effective, you are going to need to communicate with the pilot and captain, as there is not a huge amount of visibility from the remote camera. Surprise, surprise. There is a whole room dedicated to loading the ship's 28 size 10 torpedoes, but I haven't tried seeing if there's a grid for torpedoes to be loaded manually yet. The torpedoes also share the same room as the 576 SCU cargo bay, complete with an interior tractor beam and a really awesome long as hell ramp. The spacious engineering room with access to all the ship's components and an engineering terminal is once again giving me those Star Trek vibes. There's enough room to swing a cat, but I can't help but feel CIG could have used some of this space to implement ladders down to the engine room, which is only accessible from engineering via the mini elevator, and we all know how reliable elevators are in Star Citizen. Look, even the floors aren't labelled correctly. It's a little confusing, but you can access the engine room via the cargo bay, which in this case apparently share the same floor designation. When walking in, you're greeted by the ship's gigantic engines, and I'm no engineer or ship wizard, but I think it's sitting in a pool of hydrofluid coolant, similar to what we see in the Squadron 42 vertical slice.
It's not a pool. I thought the same thing when I first saw it. It's a hydrofluid bath designed to keep the temperatures of the antimatter generators down. If they come out the bath for too long, you'd melt the ship.
Which again adds to the overwhelming sci-fi feel of this engine room, combined with the spinning, moving cogamajig thing and of course the mini wormhole space-folding jump drive. I'm pretty confident the Polaris will take you anywhere you need to go reliably. Honourable mentions now, the medical bay, while feeling a little sparse, cold and empty, does come with 4 beds and respawn mechanics, but all things considered, I actually think the Carrack has the better feeling medical bay, with some members of the Star Citizen community saying the Polaris is more like a morgue. If CIG can get multiple players respawning on these beds separately, up to a reliable standard, instead of placing respawning players into a queue or simply failing respawn completely, which is what happened multiple times in the past during our tests, having 4 beds should make the Polaris handy for respawning large amounts of people quickly. This is likely something we will test in the future in another video. The brig, much like the mess hall currently, doesn't really serve a purpose either, but it's great for a little roleplay, I guess, if that's your thing. If anybody knows what the brigs are actually supposed to be used for in Star Citizen, please let me know. I'm not sure. The Polaris otherwise is packing quite a punch with 2 remote turrets and 5 manned, including the bespoke size 6 ballistic cannons on the manned turret underneath the Polaris's chin. I'm told this isn't a very effective weapon though, and it's recommended to switch it out as soon as possible, probably in need of some balancing moving forward. The ship also heavily features the new Working Point Defense System guns, or PDCs, which in tests my Orgmates ran have been effective at taking down incoming torpedoes. That being said, they can be overwhelmed by smaller ordnance, providing space for the larger torpedoes to hit. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out in some actual combat situations in the future, using the Polaris at events like Xenothreat, Jumptown, and the new Save Stanton mission chain. Otherwise, my fellow meatbags, that's all I've got for now. Hope you enjoyed this first look at the Polaris. I'll be conducting some ops with my org and the Polaris over the coming weeks, so stay tuned for videos on that. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, thank you to my supporters and meaty members. Goodbye.